This podcast is brought to you by the IIEA, sharing ideas, shaping policy.
Good afternoon, everybody. And you're very welcome to this event with Senator Conor Murphy from Sinn Féin, who will talk to us about constitutional futures. My name is Dahi O'Kelly. I'm a former Director General here for my sins, but I did enjoy it many years ago. And I'm the chair of the UK group in the Institute. Just a few pointers first. Both the opening remarks, which will take about 15, 20 minutes, and the question and answer session are on the record. And the Senator is very willing to take questions on whatever you want to talk about. If you are asking a question, whether it's online or whether it's in person here, if you would just identify yourself and if you have any relationship with a particular organisation. Senator Conor Murphy has been around for quite a long while. He's from Newry, and he was a local councillor in the area. And then in 2005, he took the Westminster seat, which had been held by Seamus Mallon. Afterwards, in the Assembly in Northern Ireland, he was a minister, particularly for finance, and has a very distinguished record as a minister in Northern Ireland. So this meeting itself is part of a series with the various different parties in Northern Ireland in particular to learn what their views are and how they see things coming in the future. So it's a great pleasure to welcome you, Senator Conor Murphy.
Well, thank you very much, Dahi, and thank you to the Institute for the invitation. I'm very, very pleased to be able to have the opportunity to speak to you all here this morning, or this afternoon as it is now. I wanted to talk a little bit about, as Dahi says, I have a long experience from the Good Friday Agreement right through to current times, and I have held a number of ministerial portfolios north of the border, as well as being an MP for 10 years. I was in charge of regional development, finance, and also economy when I took the decision then to come down and contest the Seanad elections. And I have to say, most people ask me how you find it. I'm enjoying it very much. I'm very pleased to be here. It's different, but I see it as an opportunity which is very much consistent with what took me into politics in the first place. And that is the purpose of the address that I wanted to make here today, to talk about the prospect of constitutional change, to try and frame it in some of my own experiences in terms of some of the work I've done over the years, and to emphasise what I consider to be an imperative to begin to plan and discuss out the potential of change on the island and what that might mean and how we may embrace that. So I again thank the Institute for the opportunity to come and speak to you. So from my own perspective, I believe that for the people of Ireland, in the last 30 years, 2 years stand out more than most. 1998 and 2016, and they do so for very different reasons. 1998 was the year that the people of Ireland voted to endorse the Good Friday Agreement, and 2016 was the year that the people of the north of Ireland voted to remain inside the EU and reject Brexit, and yet the British government ignored that democratic will of the people of the north and forcibly removed us from the EU in January 2020. In both those referenda, large numbers of the Unionist and Protestant population voted in favour of the Good Friday Agreement and against Brexit. I think this demonstrated that they are interested in being part of a wider set of relationships across Ireland and the EU. The Good Friday Agreement promised and delivered unprecedented and positive change within Ireland, between Ireland and Britain, and between Ireland and the EU. And Brexit promised and delivered chaos in Britain and risked damaging the peace process in Ireland. The combined pressure of the United States administration and the EU ensured that the damage to the peace process and to the economies of Ireland was contained. The message eventually getting through to the British government that Ireland was a special case and should not be press-ganged into a hard Brexit regime. At this time, the EU was at its very best as it protected Ireland's national interests against the national interests of the British government. And the EU has made it clear that in the event of the people of Ireland voting yes to a new United Ireland in referenda, North and South, as catered for by the Good Friday Agreement, Ireland will automatically rejoin the EU. In their own way, both the Good Friday Agreement and the Brexit negotiations grappled with the great wrong imposed on the people of Ireland, that is, the partition of our country. Inherent in both is the reality of the aggressive denial by the British government of the rights of the people of Ireland to decide their own future without interference by that government. Partition in 1921 was the British government's reaction to the democratic will of the vast majority of the people of Ireland who, in the general election of 1918, voted for Irish independence by voting for Sinn Féin. The British government imposed partition and militarily suppressed the democratic will of the people of this country. So partition has disrupted the natural circuits of commerce in Ireland, discouraging investment, creating inefficiencies and hindering trade. An irony given that the British government gerrymandered the new northern states to protect the privilege of the unionist ruling class, the northeast of Ireland is now the island's weakest region economically. It has slipped from being the most dynamic and industrial part of Ireland just before partition to trailing the south on every measure of economic success and quality of life. Hardly surprising given that it was placed into enforced isolation from the rest of the island as a matter of policy for more than 70 years. Labour productivity in the south of Ireland today is more than 2.5 times the gross national income is 57% higher in the south than GDP in the north. Wages are 36% higher here. 26.3% of government expenditure goes to health in the south today compared to 17.3% in the north. Children born in the south today will live 2 years longer than children born in the north. Across all age groups in education enrolment, rates are higher in the south than the north. 94% of 15 to 19-year-olds are in education in the south compared to only 71% in the north. And of course, I could go on. And yet the north has so much potential that has been underexploited in the current constitutional framework. Assets that, if properly invested in, could bring so much to the balance sheet of a new Ireland and make the north once again a powerhouse of economic innovation. Belfast has the island's only large-scale deep-water port, heavy manufacturing capacity, critical for our own shared offshore renewable energy targets, as well as 3 of the other main ports on the island are in the north. Mid-Ulster has a very significant indigenous manufacturing sector, with many of its products being global leaders. The creative arts industry has continued to build on the success of Game of Thrones, with significant investment in new studios, as well as groundbreaking training and education facility under the management of Ulster University. The fintech and cybersecurity sectors are achieving global recognition. We have 2 top-class universities, Queen's and Ulster, 2 excellent teacher training colleges in St Mary's and Stranmillis, thousands of world-class researchers, a young, hard-working population, 6 industry-orientated further education colleges and a thriving tourism sector. The region's cultural heritage is central to Irish identity. The Irish languages thrive north of the border. It is the burial place of St Patrick, the seat of major Christian churches in Ireland, the birthplace of some of Ireland's greatest poets, performers and sports people, and of course the current holders of the All-Ireland Sam Maguire Cup. And it's an important distinction. When Dahi said I was from Newry, I have to say I'm from the Armagh side of Newry. The Good Friday Agreement was the first agreement since the partition in 1921 in which the British government addressed the causes of conflict in Ireland. It did so with the Irish government and all the parties to the conflict, with the exception of the DUP. The agreement fundamentally altered British government's illegal claim on a part of Ireland. The Government of Ireland Act in 1920 was repealed and coupled with an explicit and unprecedented commitment by the British government to recognise the legitimacy of the outcome of any future referendum on the North's place in the United Kingdom. The agreement's political framework was set in an all-Ireland context, with a North-South Ministerial Council, an Executive and Assembly, and a British-Irish Council. These institutions allow politicians to be directly involved in the affairs of the people of Ireland daily. Over the years, civic and business leaders argued that regardless of how Ireland was governed, it made sense for such a small island to operate as a single economic unit. A very good example of the practical outworking of the Good Friday Agreement through Intertrade Ireland, one of its bodies, is the increase in All-Ireland trade, which is now valued at £12.4 billion annually, up from less than £2 billion in 1998. However, with the North tied to Britain's economic model and its problems, Brexit included, as I've shown, economic performance in the South now far surpasses that north of the border. Unfortunately, expectations that a new government in Britain, led by Labour, would end the economic mismanagement and the austerity policies of the Tories have not been realised, and the funding of public services continues to face critical pressure. Thankfully, the protocol, which had the backing of the Irish Government and the EU, protects the All-Ireland economy with respect to manufactured goods and agri-food by keeping the whole of Ireland in the EU market for goods. Cross-border trade is now surging, and now that there's a degree of certainty in relation to our trading arrangements. And this is the beneficial outworking of the peace and political processes in parallel with the All-Ireland institutions of the Good Friday Agreement. Cross-border tourism has also increased significantly. Individual companies, sectoral clusters and supply chains increasingly operate on an all-Ireland basis. And in my time as Economy Minister, I ensured that cross-border cooperation was promoted between our economic development agencies, North and South. I led the first ever joint trade mission involving the IIEA, Enterprise Ireland and Invest NI to Singapore last autumn. And I'm confident that the current Economy Minister, Keith Archibald, will continue to expand that cooperation, particularly to maximise the export and inward investment opportunities created by dual market access and to remove the barriers to cross-border studying and working. So it's time to build on that success. And this is recognised by the government here too, as it was appropriate, and it was appropriate. One of my first meetings as Economy Minister in the North's executive was to meet my then counterpart in the South, Simon Coveney, at the Intertrade offices in Newry. The first time a Northern and Southern Minister had stood in that office together for 22 years. But however, we must go further. Because while it's the case that we can have the best of both worlds with respect to trade in manufactured goods and agri-food products, the North has lost many of the benefits of full EU membership. Notably, access to the single market for tradable services, which is an important sector in the North, access to EU workers and EU funding and free movement of tourists. And there are uncertainties with respect to mutual recognition of qualifications. Objectively, the best of both worlds would be a reunified All-Ireland economy, which combines the best of the South and the best of the North. And that is where the conversation is going and has been going on the ground. Opinion polling confirms that support for unity has grown significantly in the past 3 years, with a majority of voters under 45 opting for a united Ireland. But both governments need to catch up with this reality. Our regional government in the North, working in conjunction with the government here in Dublin, can minimise some of the difficulties created by partition, but that comes at a substantial cost. The Irish and British governments, who have the sovereignty to take the necessary decisions, must recognise that partition is the root problem and prepare the ground to allow the people of Ireland to decide our future. On such a small island, partition was always an indefensible construct, but especially now in the 21st century. It's only through constitutional change that we can free the North from its ties to Britain's failing economy, gain full control over our economic destiny, and realise the full potential of the All-Ireland economy and of the integration of government and administration of public services. The potential of the All-Ireland economy, amongst many other opportunities associated with constitutional change, was highlighted in a report in July 2024 by the Oireachtas Good Friday Agreement Committee. This comprehensive report, which is an all-party report, in considering the potential offered by a new United Ireland, concluded that the planning and preparation for a scenario of change needed to begin as soon as possible, not least to ensure that voters who would ultimately decide the future constitutional shape of Ireland were well informed and that the mistakes of the Brexit referendum were not repeated. The Irish government, as a sovereign government for 3/4 of the island, is not just best placed, but it is duty-bound, given its responsibilities under the Good Friday Agreement, to lead this planning and preparation phase which we are now entering. It is obvious that the next step for the Irish government, following on from their work through the Shared Island Initiative, which has made involvement in the debate by those who identify as culturally unionist much easier. The debate now needs to be accelerated through a citizens' assembly and other forums, which should be established by the government to encourage greater participation by populations across the island in deciding their future. There are members of the Unionist and Protestant community already involved in the constitutional debate, and that, of course, is very welcome. And what is quite clear is that there are many issues for Republicans, Nationalists and Unionists to talk about. The fears of the Unionist community need to be addressed in a meaningful way. We need to look at what they mean when they say they are British and be willing to explore that and be open to new ideas. Respect and cooperation must be the cornerstone on which a new Ireland is built. And for unionists, this means a new Ireland must be shared and integrated, and that they play a key role in building it. A place where unionists have equal ownership, where there will be respect for their cultural identity, and where it has been demonstrated to them that they are welcome, needed, and belong. So this is a time of great change and great opportunity for the people of Ireland. And I would argue that we should embrace it with open arms, hearts, and minds. Thank you very much.
This podcast is brought to you by the IIEA, sharing ideas, shaping policy.